April 9th, 2003. That was the day that a statue of Saddam Hussein was brought down in Baghdad's Firdos Square. Now, we now know the truth of how that moment was created. That a battalion of Marines found themselves near a hotel that was a journalist hangout. That one man, Sergeant Leon Lambert, took it upon himself to tell his captain that Iraqis wanted the statue taken down. So he was given permission to lend them his sledgehammer. But as much flack as the military received, perhaps it's more important, as Peter Moss of The New Yorker has done in a long investigation, to point fingers at the media for their embarrassing overreaction that day. Britt Hume of Fox saying this transcends anything I've ever seen. CNN's Bill Hemmer calling it a seminal moment in a nation's history, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. But why do we really care about the media's reaction to that one event? Well, because I'm wondering if they've learned anything. Here to discuss it with me is Jamie McIntyre, former CNN senior Pentagon correspondent, who now blogs on military and media issues at lineofdeparture.com. Jamie, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this, some people were calling this the mission accomplished moment for the media, much like George Bush had on that aircraft carrier. But, I mean, here the government didn't need to create a story. The military didn't need to create a story. Do you go in line with Moss's argument that this is the media's fault? They really hyped this thing up?
Well, first of all, I think it's an excellent article, and they've really done a terrific job in going back and doing what journalism should do best, which is to go back and look at an event, bring more reporting to bear, do more research, and write a very nuanced piece about what happened there. And to answer your first question that you asked, has the media learned anything? I don't think they've learned a lot. I think if this were to happen the same way again today, they'd probably fall into the same trap.
Wait, so you're saying, you know, that's good when journalism, when we can look back through history, when we can take the time to investigate, but that exactly points to what the problem was here, right? Is that there's a picture, there's something going on, and everybody jumps on the story without any regard for facts or really, you know, for the bigger picture. Well, if it looks good, then you're going to make a narrative out of it.
It's a little more nuanced than that, but I think that the criticism, I think, is well placed. One of the problems is it's difficult to put things in historical perspective without the benefit of time, additional information, and really knowing what's going on. It was hard to know exactly what was going on. That said, the full context of what was happening when the statue was brought down and the fact that there was really a very small crowd and it wasn't really clear who the Iraqis were and what they really wanted, and that it was pretty much very much a symbolic moment, and that if not staged by the U.S. military, it was at least stage managed by the military. They facilitated it. Now, symbolic moments like this can be you know, they can be meaningful. They are symbolic. They can also be newsworthy, but they need to be put in the proper context. And, you know, to give everybody some credit, it wasn't entirely clear at that point, April 9th, 2003, which way the war was going to go.
But at the same time, we have, you know, there are pieces in this article, evidence of certain reporters calling their editors, telling them, I don't believe that, you know, the importance of this moment is what you say it is. And the editors tell them, well, scrap everything else you're working on. Make sure that we focus on the celebratory nature of what's happening here. So here you have editors from way afar telling you in Iraq what the story is.
And that's something that I think we haven't learned the lesson of that. And part of that is there's a couple of dynamics going on there. One is the editors and producers who are far away think that they have the big picture and that the reporters who are there are too close to the story and they don't see what's going on. That happens all the time. Reporters are constantly being told by their editors that you don't have the whole story and you need to get with the program. The other thing is it's a very appealing narrative that the statue's coming down, that the U.S. is being welcomed as liberators and that the Iraqis are happy. And a lot of times news organizations aren't really interested in hearing a lot of contrary facts that go against the narrative, whether it's a positive narrative, as in this case, or a negative narrative.
But they're not interested. Why? Because this is going to be a negative narrative for a war that a lot of Americans didn't support to begin with, something that the government wanted the media to support?
No, it's because and this is the case with a lot of stories, is because the editors tend to favor stories that have a simple, compelling storyline. And when you start to bring a lot of extra facts and context in, it takes the edge off the story. It's just not as exciting a story. It's not clear what it means. It's not as big a deal. It's not as good a story. It's, you know, the expression we have in journalism is another story ruined by too much reporting, or, you know, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So it's a really beneficial thing that Peter Moss and the New Yorker and ProPublica have gone back and really tried to, in a very contextual way, put this back in perspective. Anybody who really wants to sort of understand all the dynamics that were at play there would get a good read.
But then, of course, comes the argument, well, it's nice that he's doing it now, but what if we had known even before invading Iraq that they didn't really have weapons of mass destruction? If the media had been doing their job properly then, well, checking the government's lies.
I think one of the myths about that is that the media was critical of whether or not the intelligence was correct, but there was no way, I would submit, in 2002 to prove or disprove what the Bush administration was saying, short of going to war. And I think
but there was also no way to speak out against it without being called, perhaps, treasonous. That you're not a patriot if you're not supporting what the government is
There was a way, but you had
here.
to be very careful. And the problem was you couldn't come up with the evidence to refute them. And what the media did take the Bush administration at its word was that they believed what they were saying. Now, some people have debated about whether there was deliberate intentions to mislead the public and the press, or whether it was just honest mistakes that were made. So I think that's where the controversy
we're running out of time. I just want to ask you another question here, which is, when you're in that kind of environment, if you're a reporter that goes abroad to a war, you're embedded with the military, or if you're a reporter that has access to high-level officials, is there any way to get past that sort of hero worship? Because you're dependent on these people. If you're in a war zone, you're dependent on the military for their protection and for the story. If you're with these high-level officials, you're dependent on them letting you in to get the story. So is there any way to be, independent anymore?
Well, I think reporters don't give up their critical faculties just because they're embedded with somebody or traveling with somebody. I think if you went with somebody, you would still probably have the same inquisitive, questioning mind that you have. But one of the things reporters have to remind themselves is they don't have all the facts in these situations. And if they're going with what they have at the time and what they can see at the time and what they know at the time, they also have an obligation to go back and keep correcting the record as they get more information, as they continue to report, as they find that context. And yes, sometimes it can take a while. This has been a long time that we've seen this article
Peter
from there.
Moss has done that here.
But good reporters do that, and over time you do get a nuanced picture that really does help you understand what's going on.
Well, we definitely have an interesting picture here, the right picture, the true picture, I guess, with this piece. Thank you so much for being here, Jamie.
All right, thanks a lot.